There comes a moment in every life, quiet, almost invisible, when the curtain trembles. It happens not with thunder, but with a whisper, a subtle dissonance, a vibration in the air, a feeling that something no longer fits. You walk into a room, and before a single word is spoken, you can feel it. The heaviness, the pretense, the distance behind the smiles. Everyone seems to be playing along, following invisible rules written by no one and obeyed by all. Their laughter lands a little too late. Their words float like smoke, visible for a moment, then gone. And I stand there, realizing that I can see through it, through the polished surfaces, the choreographed gestures, the delicate illusions that hold the world together. It's strange, isn't it? To see what others don't, to feel what others can't. At first, it feels like a blessing, a clarity that cuts through the fog. But clarity has a cost. It shows you how fragile the architecture of human meaning really is. You start to see the invisible agreements that build the world. Money, sacred paper. Time, a trick of measurement. Status, a costume stitched by insecurity. Careers, titles, reputation, all constructs of a mind terrified of its own silence. And suddenly, something inside you begins to wake up. You realize that these things, these solid pillars of existence, are no more solid than mist. The spell begins to dissolve, and the game loses its seriousness. You start laughing in moments that others call tragic. You find peace in places where others panic. You feel like an intruder in a play where everyone else believes the script is real. That's when you learn the first law of awakening. When you see the puppet strings, the magic disappears. And when the magic disappears, so does your belonging. You don't fit anymore. You can't pretend that cardboard is gold, that noise is meaning, that movement is progress. And yet, the world insists that you do. You become an outsider to the players, not because you reject them, but because your seeing disturbs their sleep. And they will call your clarity cynicism, your detachment arrogance, your peace indifference, but you know it's not that. You've simply stepped outside the dream. I began to understand why the mystics hid in mountains, why philosophers turned their eyes inward, why the prophets spoke in riddles, because once you see the fabric of illusion, words start to fail. It's not rebellion, it's remembrance. Not escape, but return. You begin to feel like a child who suddenly realizes that the adults are pretending too. The seriousness of the world starts to look like a performance. The wars, the ambition, the endless striving, all of it begins to resemble children fighting over toys that will one day turn to dust. And yet, you cannot unsee it. You can't unknow what has been revealed. Once the eye opens, it doesn't close again. There's a cost to such vision. You lose the comfort of certainty. You lose the rhythm of the crowd. You lose the illusion of importance that everyone else wears like armor. But something else takes its place. Something silent, infinite, impossible to name. You begin to sense the pulse beneath things, a deeper music that doesn't play through instruments, but through being itself. When I walk now, I feel it beneath the pavement, a hum that connects everything. The trees breathe it, the wind sings it. Even the stillness of a room hums with it. It's the sound of existence watching itself, quietly, through the eyes of whoever dares to awaken. But awakening is not a gentle thing. It breaks before it heals. It strips before it gives. You start to question everything, not as an act of rebellion, but as a call for truth. Why do we live as if our lives belong to the clock? Why do we chase numbers that will vanish when we do? Why do we call survival success and conformity wisdom? You begin to see that the world does not resist truth because it is evil. It resists truth because it is fragile. Illusion is a delicate ecosystem, and those who see too much are like sudden light. They reveal everything, and in doing so, they threaten the balance of the dream. So you learn to tread softly, to carry your awareness like a candle in the wind, to speak less, to observe more, to listen for the silence between thoughts. Because that silence, that vast, breathing stillness, begins to feel more real than any of the noise we used to call life. And in that silence, a question begins to rise from somewhere far beneath language. If everything I believed was a dream, then who is the one that dreams? If everything is an illusion, who is the one that watches? If nothing is real, who is the one that asks?
The first thing that changes when you begin to see is not the world. It's you. Your eyes become too honest for comfort. You look at people and you can feel their masks before they speak. You sense the weight of their pretending, not with judgment, but with a quiet ache. Because you remember when you used to wear those masks too. And now, everywhere you go, the world seems to be whispering the same sentence: play along or be alone. I used to think awakening would bring joy, a kind of endless clarity, but the truth is far gentler and far harder. Awakening brings sensitivity. It opens the heart so wide that even the smallest lie can bruise it. You start feeling everything: the beauty, the suffering, the contradictions, all at once. It's not that you no longer belong to the world. It's that you belong to it too deeply. You begin to care for things you never noticed: the sound of footsteps fading in a corridor, the way the wind folds itself around a tired tree, the silence after someone says, "I'm fine," but doesn't mean it. You start seeing souls instead of roles. And that vision, it changes everything. But the world does not easily welcome the one who sees. It prefers those who keep the rhythm, who nod and smile and obey the invisible script. The moment you stop dancing to its tune, you become suspicious. People start asking, "What's wrong with you?" They want to fix your silence, cure your peace, heal your refusal to panic. It's not personal. It's survival. They need you to believe what they believe. Otherwise, the spell weakens. So, they call your detachment laziness. They call your freedom irresponsibility. They call your serenity madness. Because it's easier to call you mad than to ask why they are tired all the time. There are moments when I almost envy them, the sleepers. Their certainty looks warm from a distance. Their purpose seems simple: work, rest, repeat. But I know that if I step back into that dream, it will no longer fit. The illusion only shelters those who don't know it's an illusion. Once you've seen the scaffolding behind the stage, the play can never be the same. So I wander, half human, half question. Every crowd feels too loud, every silence too deep. I start to understand why prophets spoke in symbols, why sages smiled instead of answering. Because language breaks under the weight of seeing. It can describe everything except the truth that breathes beneath everything. And in that unspoken space, compassion begins to bloom. You see that ignorance is not evil, it's innocence. People cling to illusions because they are afraid of emptiness, afraid that without them, there would be nothing left. But what they call nothing is the beginning of everything. One evening, I watched the sunset dissolve into the sea. The horizon disappeared, and for a moment, I couldn't tell where the water ended or the sky began. That's what awakening feels like. The boundaries blur. You realize that all the divisions were made of thought. What separates you from others was never real. And yet knowing this doesn't make life easier. It makes it more delicate. Every argument becomes unnecessary. Every victory feels hollow. You stop wanting to win and start wanting to understand. You start wanting to hold the world, even when it trembles. Sometimes I wish I could offer this vision as a gift, to just hand it over like a flower and say, "Look, this is what's behind the veil." But vision cannot be given. It can only awaken. And awakening cannot be forced. You can shake someone's shoulders, but you can't open their eyes for them. So I've learned to walk quietly, to love quietly, to teach without teaching. I've learned that truth travels best when disguised as kindness, that light can enter only where the heart has softened, and that the universe doesn't need saving, only seeing. Still, there are nights when it hurts, when the laughter of others sounds like an echo from a world I can't return to, when the beauty I see feels too large to hold alone, when I wonder if perhaps the cost of clarity is too high. But then something tender arrives, maybe a stranger's smile, a song from an open window, or just the wind reminding me that everything breathes together. And I remember, the purpose of seeing is not escape, it's participation. It's to live so awake that even pain becomes holy. And if you've ever felt this strange clarity that isolates and connects all at once, then you know the price. You know the beauty that hides beneath the ache. And if these words find you in that space, somewhere between belonging and exile, stay a while. Leave a small trace of your presence here. Like this video. Subscribe if you wish. Not out of routine, but as an act of recognition. A quiet way of saying, I see too. Because those who see must remind each other that they are not alone in the dark. And when I remember that, the world softens again. The noise becomes music. The loneliness becomes prayer. The vision does not get lighter, but I grow stronger, not by resisting it, but by allowing it to hold me.
There comes a point where the distance between what I see and what I can say becomes unbearable. Words used to feel infinite. They could describe storms, tenderness, even God. But now they fall short. They crumble before reaching what is true. How do you describe the silence behind all sounds? The presence that listens through your eyes? How do you explain to someone that the world they take for solid is made of breath and thought and dream? You can't. So you stop trying. And that's when the second transformation begins. The movement from speaking to reflecting, from voice to mirror. I used to believe truth had to be shouted, that awakening meant proclaiming what I'd seen. But I learned, slowly, painfully, that shouting light into darkness only blinds people. Illumination isn't forced, it's invited. Like dawn, it arrives quietly, through cracks of gentleness. So I started to become quieter, I began to listen more than I spoke, to observe more than I interfered. And the more I listened, the more I realized that everyone is trying to tell the same story, just in different languages. A child crying for attention, a man chasing success, a woman praying for peace. They're all searching for the same thing: connection, to be seen, to be known. Even the cruel ones, even the arrogant ones, beneath their masks, they are begging to be understood. It's strange. The deeper I see into people, the more impossible it becomes to hate them. Because hatred requires distance. And when you see the roots of their suffering, that distance dissolves. You begin to understand that every shadow is just light afraid of itself. That's when I understood what it means to be a mirror. A mirror doesn't judge. It doesn't choose what to reflect. It doesn't say, "I prefer sunlight to storm." It simply shows, without distortion, without denial. And in that reflection, truth has a chance to see itself again. But that too has a cost. People don't always want mirrors. They want masks, confirmation that their story still holds. When you reflect their pain, their contradiction, their hidden longing, it can feel like an attack. They shatter you to protect their reflection. The world has always done this. It broke Socrates with poison. It crucified love on a wooden beam. It silenced poets, exiled mystics, buried seers. Not because truth is dangerous, but because it is too bright for unready eyes. There were times I asked myself if it was worth it to keep reflecting in a world that preferred its own darkness. Wouldn't it be easier to join them? To pick a mask and pretend again? But then I realized I am not here to convince. I am here to embody, to live as the message itself. Not to speak about freedom, but to move freely. Not to teach peace, but to walk as peace. Not to describe love, but to become it so fully that language dissolves. It's humbling to know that what changes the world is not what you say, but what you are. There is a vibration in authenticity that words can never reach, a stillness that transforms more than sermons ever could. When you live like this, the right people find you. They recognize something in your silence, in your calmness, in your refusal to rush. They sense home. No introductions are needed, just a nod, a look, a quiet smile that says, "I remember you." And for a brief moment, you're not alone anymore. The mirrors recognize each other, and together, they begin to multiply the light. It doesn't mean the pain disappears. Reflection is still sharp. Truth still cuts. But now the blade turns to medicine. Every wound becomes a window. Every loss, an opening. You begin to see that even breaking has purpose, that perhaps the mirror must crack for light to escape. There are days I feel translucent, not special, just empty enough for the world to pass through. Birdsong, laughter, rain, everything moves through me and leaves me softer. It's not detachment. It's participation without clinging. It's seeing the play without forgetting that I too am a character. The ego resists this. It wants to be the hero, the teacher, the one who knows. But real seeing doesn't inflate the self, it dissolves it. It leaves only awareness, pure, spacious, unclaimed. And in that space, everything becomes sacred. Even the ordinary moments, pouring coffee, hearing footsteps, feeling your breath return, begin to glow with quiet divinity. That's the paradox of seeing too much. The more you see, the less there is to say. The less you say, the more others begin to see. You become a silent invitation, a doorway, not a doctrine. And maybe that's all awakening ever was, not an escape from the world, but a way of being so open that the world can finally flow through you without distortion. I used to think enlightenment was fire. Now I know it's reflection, a mirror so clean it disappears.
There are nights when silence feels heavier than stone, when I lie awake staring at the ceiling and realize that no one around me sees the same world I do. The laughter outside the window feels distant, as if coming from another dimension, the dimension of the unbroken dream. And for a moment, I envy them. I envy those who can still believe without question, who can lose themselves in the noise, who never once doubt the stage they're standing on. Because once the illusion collapses, you can never rebuild it. You can only walk among its ruins, trying to love what remains. That is the hidden cost of seeing too much. Not rejection, not misunderstanding, but the unbearable awareness that you will never again be able to pretend. You can sit beside someone you love and still feel oceans away. You can listen to words that no longer mean what they once did. You can look at beauty and feel the ache of knowing that even this will vanish. And yet, I would not trade this sight for blindness. Because in the depths of that isolation, something begins to shimmer. It's faint at first, like a star glimpsed through fog, but you start to sense that even loneliness is part of the dance. That perhaps this silence is not absence, but presence too vast for language. I remember one evening, walking alone through empty streets after rain. The pavement glistened under streetlights, the air smelled of wet stone, and the world felt hollow but alive. Each step echoed not as sound, but as a question. And in that quiet ache, I realized I wasn't alone at all. The loneliness I felt was the universe remembering itself through me. This is what Viktor Frankl meant when he spoke of meaning in suffering. Not the romantic kind that decorates pain, but the kind that transforms it. To see deeply is to suffer consciously. To love even as you lose. To breathe even as the air burns. You learn that pain isn't punishment, it's purification. Every loss strips away what was false. Every disappointment dissolves another illusion. Every heartbreak cracks the shell of separation. And beneath it all, something unbreakable glows. But this glow demands humility. Because the moment I call myself enlightened, I am lost again. The ego is cunning. It hides even inside wisdom. It whispers, "You are special for seeing what others don't." And I have to smile because that whisper is the last mask, the one that hides inside light itself. So I keep burning, gently, patiently, letting the fire of awareness do its work, melting arrogance, pride, superiority, until only warmth remains. You see, the point of awakening was never to escape the fire. It was to learn how to live inside it without being consumed. To understand that the flames don't destroy what's real, they only burn away what never was. Sometimes I imagine humanity as a vast field of candles. Some burn high, others flicker low, many are still unlit. But the darkness is not our enemy. It's the space that allows the light to be seen. And those who awaken too soon are simply the ones chosen to burn first. I remind myself of this when the world feels too distant, when I miss the comfort of ignorance, when I ache to be understood. And in those moments, I whisper, even the sun burns alone. yet everything lives because of its light. The isolation becomes sacred then, a monastery built not of walls but of silence. Every quiet breath turns into prayer, every heartbeat becomes dialogue with the infinite. And when I look closely, I see that even suffering has rhythm. The rise and fall of loss mirrors the tides. The ache of longing mirrors the moon. Pain is not an intruder in the order of things. It is the order of things in disguise. Frankl once said that what gives life meaning is the courage to bear its contradictions, to hold joy and sorrow in the same palm and still call it beautiful. And maybe that's the real purpose of awakening, not to find a life without pain, but to find a heart spacious enough to hold it. So I keep walking through the quiet corridors of my own awareness, carrying both the ache and the awe. Every loneliness becomes a teacher, every silence a sanctuary. And when I meet others, when our eyes touch and I see the same quiet recognition, it feels like two distant stars realizing they share the same sky. The fire doesn't die, it deepens. And within it, I begin to see light not as something that rescues me from darkness, but as something that is born from it. That's when the paradox finally makes sense. That seeing too much hurts, not because the world is cruel, but because it is unspeakably beautiful. And most people can only bear to look at fragments of it at a time. So I will carry the whole of it, beauty and shadow, laughter and grief, not as weight, but as wonder. Because to see is to burn, and to burn is to live.
At some point, the fire stops feeling like punishment. It begins to feel like rhythm, like a heartbeat too vast to belong to me alone. And in that pulse, I understand life was never asking to be conquered, only to be danced with. There was a time when I thought awakening meant leaving the world behind, that to see the illusion was to walk away from it. But the more I tried to escape, the clearer it became. There is nowhere to go. The illusion and the truth are lovers. They need each other to exist. The ocean waves are not separate from the sea. They are the sea, moving in form. In the same way, I am not separate from the dream. Even my seeing is part of it. The dreamer is dreaming itself awake through me. Once I grasped this, everything softened. The war between light and dark lost its violence. I no longer needed to choose sides. I could stand in the middle, where both hands meet, shadow and sun entwined in the same cosmic dance. You see, the awakened one doesn't stop playing the game. He just plays it differently. He moves with awareness, knowing that the dice, the board, the players, all of it is sacred theater. There's no longer a need to win, no fear of losing, just the simple joy of participation. I still work, I still love, I still laugh, but now I do it lightly, like wind moving through leaves, leaving no trace. Every task becomes meditation, every mistake becomes instruction, every breath becomes a doorway into eternity. I once met an old man by the shore, his face carved by wind and time, his eyes holding that impossible calm that only comes from surrender. He told me, "You can't control the tide, but you can learn its song." At that moment, I understood what all the mystics were trying to say. Awakening is not control, it's collaboration. It's dancing with what is. Imagine waking up inside a dream and realizing that the dream is aware of you, that the wind moves because you are breathing, that the stars shine because you are watching, that every event, even the painful ones, is the dream reaching out to teach you something. The enlightened life isn't about escaping the illusion, it's about playing it beautifully, with awareness, with grace, with humor.
Because once you know it's a play, you can love it more, not less. You stop fighting the plot and start improvising with joy. Even tragedy becomes art. Even sorrow has music in it. Some days I still stumble. I still forget. I still get lost in small dramas and call them fate. But even in those moments, a quiet smile returns. Because I know forgetting is part of the remembering. The universe hides from itself to rediscover itself anew. There's a strange freedom in that. To know that perfection was never the goal. That being fully human, vulnerable, uncertain, tender, is not a flaw in the design, but its masterpiece. I think about the dancer who knows the song will end soon but dances harder anyway, not because she believes she can stop time, but because she wants to feel every note while it lasts. That's what life feels like now. Every laugh, every tear, every silence, precious, unrepeatable, ephemeral. Once I feared impermanence. Now I see it as proof of sacredness. Because if everything lasted forever, nothing would be beautiful. The cherry blossom's grace lies in its fall. The wave's glory lies in its crash. The dream's meaning lies in its ending. So I dance. Not to escape the dream, but to honor it. Each movement, each breath, a silent prayer of gratitude to the mystery that allowed me to wake inside it. When you finally stop running from illusion, something miraculous happens. It becomes transparent. You start seeing through it, to the reality shimmering behind. Every face you meet becomes a mirror of the infinite. Every ordinary moment becomes revelation. Even pain begins to shine. Because pain is just love in disguise, asking to be seen more clearly. And so I laugh more often now, not because life is easier, but because it is too profound to take seriously. I find joy in the absurd, comfort in the chaos, music in the mistakes. And in this laughter, I feel closer to truth than I ever did in solemn prayer. Because laughter too is sacred, the sound of the universe remembering that it's a game. So I keep dancing, in joy and in grief, in certainty and in doubt, trusting that each step, even the missteps, are part of the choreography of becoming. Perhaps enlightenment isn't light at all. Perhaps it's rhythm, the heartbeat of the eternal moving through everything that pretends to be separate. And if that's true, then even darkness has its melody. Even silence has its pulse. And maybe, just maybe, the purpose of seeing isn't to escape the dark, but to finally realize that the dark was also divine.
Not with certainty, but with wonder. Not with an answer, but with a deeper silence that breathes between the questions. It began with a crack in the illusion, a trembling in the fabric of what I once called real. And now, after all the fire, the solitude, the laughter, and the dance, I return to that same silence. But it feels different now. I used to think awakening was about finding the truth. Now I see it's about dissolving everything that isn't. The truth doesn't arrive like a revelation. It seeps in quietly, like light through the cracks of a broken heart. It lives not in words, but in the spaces between them, in the pause, in the breath, in the moments when thought finally bows to mystery. I realize now that I never left the dream. I only learned how to walk through it awake. There is no other world waiting beyond this one. This is it. The divine is not hidden in heaven, but humming beneath the surface of every ordinary thing. In the flicker of a candle, in the sound of rain on the roof,
in the warmth of a hand that lingers a moment longer than it should. Every moment is a doorway, and every doorway leads back to presence. The danger of seeing too much was never that I would be rejected by the world. It was that I might reject it first. That I might start believing I was above it, cleaner, wiser, separate. But there is no above. There is only depth. And love is the gravity that pulls everything toward it. Sometimes I imagine the universe as a single breath, inhaling itself into form, exhaling itself into emptiness. Each of us is a pulse in that rhythm, a brief shimmer in the infinite lung. We rise, we fall, we dissolve, we return. Nothing is lost. Nothing is wasted. Everything is simply transformed. I think of all the faces I've seen, the ones that smiled, the ones that turned away, the ones that looked at me with confusion or fear. And now I understand. Each of them was me, wearing a different story. Each rejection was recognition. Each misunderstanding, an invitation to love without needing to be understood. That's what seeing really means. Not knowing more, but needing less. Needing less approval, less control, less separation. It's a softening, not a conquest. A surrender, not a victory. And when I stop fighting life, life begins to hold me. Gently. Completely. Like an ocean that no longer needs to explain its waves. I walk slower now. I listen more. Sometimes I find myself smiling at nothing at all. Just the sheer miracle of being here. Breathing. Watching light move across a wall. Hearing a child's laughter echo down the street. I used to chase meaning. Now meaning finds me in the quietest places. The birds still sing their endless hymns. The wind still tells its secrets to the trees. And I, a brief flicker of awareness between two eternities, just listen. Because maybe that's what the universe wanted all along. Not worship, not understanding, just a witness. Someone to see, someone to remember. I don't know if what I've found has a name. Maybe it doesn't need one. Maybe names were just the first layer of forgetting. But I do know this. When I stop trying to define the light, it returns. Not as blinding revelation, but as warmth, as acceptance, as a quiet radiance that touches everything without needing to be noticed. And sometimes I wonder, maybe awakening was never about climbing toward heaven. Maybe it was about sinking fully into earth, into this breath, this body, this fleeting moment, until even the ordinary starts to glow with the pulse of eternity. The mystics called it union. Frankl called it meaning. Watts called it play. I don't know what to call it. I just know it feels like home. Still, the world keeps moving. People keep dreaming. And I walk among them quietly,
with a light I cannot hold and cannot lose. There will always be days when I forget, when I get caught in the noise, in the smallness of things, in the ache of being human. But now I know that forgetting is also part of remembering. That even in confusion, the current still carries me. So I live not searching for peace, but letting peace find me. Not clinging to meaning, but allowing meaning to bloom where it will. Not fearing the dark, because I've learned that light hides there too. And maybe, if you've seen even a glimpse of what I've seen, you understand. The world doesn't need to wake up all at once. It just needs enough of us to stay awake quietly, to keep the fire alive, to hold the mirror steady, to love what is, even when it trembles. So if these words reached you, if they stirred something that doesn't have a name, then maybe we've met before. Not here, not in time, but somewhere deeper, where all seeing begins. And if that's true, then perhaps this is not the end at all. Perhaps it's just the pause before the universe inhales again, before the dream remembers itself, before the light returns.